The chilling case of Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells. Do you call yourself a true crime fanatic? If you do, you're likely undaunted by even the most disturbing cases. But the case of Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells is so incredibly horrific that it is guaranteed to bring a shiver down your spine. Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells were two 11-year-old girls from the town of Soham in the United Kingdom. They were best of friends and only 1 month apart from one another in age. The case began August 4th of 2002. Jessica and her family had recently returned to town after going on vacation. She was eager to visit with Holly and give her a gift she had brought home for her, so she called her friend up and asked if she could come over. Holly's parents, Kevin and Nicola, gave her permission to visit. They would be having a cookout with some friends that evening that Jessica could stay for. Once Jessica arrived, she changed into a bright orange Manchester United football jersey with the name Beckham on the back. It was the exact same jersey Holly was wearing that night. Thinking they looked cute in their matching outfits, Holly's mother snapped a quick picture of the two girls standing together arm in arm. After the girls had eaten, they headed up to Holly's bedroom for a while until deciding they wanted to run out to purchase some sweets. The girls didn't alert anyone at the cookout that they were heading out. While this may seem odd, the sweet shop was a short walking distance away and they likely expected to be gone for no more than a few minutes. It was approximately 6:15 p.m. when the two girls left the Wells home. At 8:20 that evening, Holly's mother Nicola called for the girls to come downstairs. When they didn't answer, she went up to Holly's room only to find it empty. Despite not knowing where the girls were, she wasn't overly concerned. Their curfew wasn't until 8:30 p.m., and she assumed they would be back shortly. By the time 8:45 p.m. rolled around, Nicola began to grow increasingly concerned. She called Jessica's mother Sharon to see if the girls had gone over to their house, but Sharon had not seen them. Holly's father Kevin went out with a group of men to search for the girls, but to no avail. At 9:56 p.m. that evening, the families contacted the police. That night, one of the largest and most infamous searches in all of the nation would begin for the two little girls. With the help of witnesses who had seen the girls walk into the candy shop that night and through video surveillance footage, police were able to quickly narrow down where the girls had gone. Just as they had planned, they had made purchases at the sweet shop at the Soham Village College. On their way home, they were spotted arm in arm, skipping and talking happily with no idea of the horrors that would soon be coming their way. Holly and Jessica were last seen speaking with a man named Ian Huntley, a caretaker at their school. The girls knew Huntley through his girlfriend Maxine Carr, a former teacher's assistant of theirs. After speaking briefly with Huntley, the two girls headed on the direction of home and were never seen alive again. Because he was the person last seen with Holly and Jessica, Huntley was a clear starting point for the investigation. When police asked him about their interaction, he explained that he had been washing off his dog when the two girls strolled by. They approached him to ask about how Maxine was doing. They just came across to ask how Miss Carr was, he explained. She used to teach them at St. Andrews, and I just said that she wasn't very good as she had not got the job. They just said, "Tell her that we're very sorry," and walked off in the direction of the library over there, Huntley said simply. Throughout the interview, Huntley appeared calm and his story seemed legitimate. While he did seem like an unusual person, he didn't provide any reason to assume he had anything to do with the disappearance of Jessica and Holly. Sky News anchorman Jeremy Thompson recalled Huntley's demeanor. There was something odd about him, but it seemed a plausible explanation that he gave, he said. Maxine Carr was also later interviewed and spoke to Thompson on television about the situation. While she spoke very highly of the girls, she also claimed to have no idea about where they went. But Thompson noticed something peculiar when he rolled the tape back. At one point during the interview, she referred to Holly in the past tense. She was a lovely girl, she said. As the days went on, investigators and the girls' families continued to cling on to hope that Jessica and Holly would be found safe. But they also knew that in each passing day, this was becoming less and less likely. As the investigation continued, police made a suspicious discovery. Carr had told investigators that she had been in the bath when Huntley spoke with Jessica and Holly on the night of their disappearances. Nevertheless, phone records proved that she was really at her mother's house more than 100 miles away. Why is this detail so important? Because she hadn't been home on the night of August 4th, and so she could not provide an alibi for Huntley. You're not the only one smelling something fishy. Investigators were instantly put on the alert. This caused investigators to begin to look into Huntley's past, and what they found will shock you. While on the outside, Huntley showed no signs of being a villain, he had a startlingly dark past. He had a history of assaulting women and had even been seen in public abusing Carr. He was known to be controlling and manipulative. He was also previously charged with rape in a different city, but the charges were later dropped. Perhaps most stomach-churning was the fact that Huntley had a fascination with younger girls. Even with all of this concerning information, police still had no concrete evidence that Huntley had done anything to hurt the girls. Their suspicions mounting, investigators brought both Carr and Huntley in for questioning. Huntley remained firm in his story, and Carr did not divulge any new information. But investigators weren't going to give up, and by August 17th of 2002, they had a major break in the case. The matching orange jerseys that the girls had worn on the night of their disappearance were discovered in a tub at the school that they had attended, and Huntley was employed. Underwear and shoes were also found in the tub. The items appeared to be partially burnt, leading investigators to fear that the worst had happened. While they were a step closer to nailing the case, investigators still hadn't found what they wanted the most: Holly and Jessica. Finally, that same day, the bodies of Holly and Jessica were found in a ditch in Lakenheath, a town about 32 minutes away from Soham. It was clear the girls had been brutally murdered. Their bodies had become decomposed, so it was impossible to determine whether or not they had been sexually assaulted before their deaths. It is not known how exactly Jessica and Holly's lives came to a tragic end. However, because they had no broken bones, it is suspected strangulation was the cause. The girls' bodies would later be officially identified through DNA testing. Investigators were now certain Huntley had murdered Jessica and Holly, but they still needed more evidence to link him to the bodies, and he had covered his tracks well. Huntley and Carr's home was thoroughly searched. Investigators were looking for anything such as fingerprints, blood, or hair that could be a connection to the girls. While the forensic team found no clues, they did find that the house had been meticulously cleaned, and even the bed sheets had been recently washed. Investigators called in forensic botanist Patricia Wiltshire to lend a helping hand with the case. She closely examined the soil and greenery at the site at which the girls' bodies were found. Once she determined what the exact type of soil was, the wheels of Huntley's car were examined. Sure enough, the same type of soil was found in the tread of Huntley's wheels. This was exactly what police had been waiting for. They finally had enough evidence to move forward with charges. On August 20th, Huntley was formally charged with 2 counts of murder. Carr would also pay the price for lying to investigators in order to protect her boyfriend. She was charged with pervading the course of justice as well as assisting an offender. Meanwhile, the heartbroken family of Jessica and Holly would finally have the closure they needed. The little girls were laid to rest following their funerals the following month. In order to process their grief, both families requested private ceremonies. Before a hearing could take place, Huntley had to go through a mental health assessment. The intention of this was to prove that he was mentally competent to stand a trial. It was determined that he was mentally stable enough to proceed with the hearing, and he was transferred to Woodhill Prison in Buckinghamshire. Several days before the pre-trial hearing, Huntley attempted to take his own life by taking a multitude of antidepressants he'd secretly been saving up in his cell. His attempt was unsuccessful, and he was returned to prison only 48 hours after the suicide attempt. During the hearing on June 16th of 2003, Huntley pleaded not guilty to the murder of both Jessica and Holly. Carr also pleaded not guilty to the charges she faced in connection to the crime. In order to defend himself, Huntley made up a bizarre story about how, though he had witnessed both Jessica and Holly's death, he had not meant to kill either of them. He claimed that Holly was suffering from a nosebleed, so he invited her into his bathroom to assist her with cleaning it up. While they were in the bathroom, he accidentally knocked her into the bathtub, which was filled with water meant for Huntley's dog. He went on to claim that Holly drowned and that Jessica, witnessing the incident, began to scream, accusing him of pushing her friend. In an effort to quiet her yells, Huntley claims he placed his hand over her mouth and suffocated her by mistake. If you're not buying this story, you're not alone. On December 17th of 2003, the jury presiding in the case had reached their decision following a 4-day deliberation. They had determined that Huntley was guilty for the deaths of both Jessica and Holly. He was sentenced to life in prison. Meanwhile, Carr was found not guilty of assisting an offender, but was found guilty for perverting the course of justice and was sentenced to 3.5 years behind bars. As for the motive behind Huntley's decision to kill the girls, the answer is not known. What do you think? Will Huntley ever reveal what he was thinking on that tragic night? Or will we never know? Let us know in the comments.